Hello, and welcome to the beBetter Health Learning Series. My name is Gary Sams, and I'm the Chief Wellness Officer for beBetter Health. I'm also an adjunct professor at West Virginia University in the School of Public Health, and I'm really pleased to be here today to deliver this first session in the series, the Top 10 Trends in Workplace Wellness. Before I actually get on to the presentation, I just want to give you a few housekeeping notes. The presentation that we're doing today, as well as other presentations that we'll be doing in the series, will be recorded and also be made available on our website, along with other health education content that we have on various topics. Our expectation for this series is to do a session every other month or so for 30 or 40 minutes, so nothing too taxing from a time perspective, where we'll cover topics of interest to those that are really charged with delivering workplace health and wellness programs. So that's what we have planned for you, and let's launch into the session today. The trends that I'm going to talk about today, and I mentioned I'm going to cover 10 of them. It's really difficult to kind of narrow it down to 10 trends actually, because healthcare is changing so dramatically these days, as is the space of workplace wellness. So I tried to sort of think of the things that were mostly impacting our programs, those types of trends, and to really focus in on those. And one of the first ones that came to mind was this whole idea of employee engagement. And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm really thinking kind of in two different ways. First, from more of a global perspective, engagement in work, engagement in the workplace. And this has been pretty topical, over the past year. Gallup, which most of us are familiar with that organization, they do a lot of national surveys around work and life and quality of work. A recent survey that they published showed that only 32% of U.S. workers were engaged in their jobs. And that's really kind of an astounding number when you think of it, in that the majority of folks are saying that they're not fully engaged. And when we think of having really productive organizations where we're innovating, we're developing new products, services, providing the best that we can, it really requires a fully engaged workforce to do that effectively. And so if people aren't engaged, how can we help them to engage? The other way that I look at engagement is more in the terms of workplace wellness. In the past, we used to confuse participation with engagement. And we would say that, if we had, for example, 70% of the population taking a health risk survey, that was good. We had good participation numbers. And while that number in itself isn't bad, to get 70% or so people participating in a survey, what we've come to understand is to really have an impact on health and wellness, both on an individual and an organizational level, participation isn't enough. We need to actually have people engaged. And I'm going to define engagement a little more directly here as we go through. But I wanted to kind of get that out there, sort of talking about engagement from two different perspectives: overall engagement in work life, as well as engagement in our own personal health and well-being and what that takes. Now, why is that important? I pulled out a few stats that really jumped out at me from the Gallup survey. 27, when you look at those respondents, the employees who were really engaged, that 32%, and had high well-being, were 27% more likely to report excellent performance in their own job at work. So that's quite a difference between those that are and, again, those that aren't. 59% less likely to look for a job within a different organization in the next 12 months. And to me, that's really important because our economy is improving. We know that the labor market is tightening, unemployment is going down, and so organizations are really going to be challenged to attract and retain the most talented people. So having programs in place that impact engagement and well-being are going to be more and more important in that labor market. So how can we impact this whole issue of engagement from a workplace wellness perspective? Well, we can do that through helping people be more well, improving their well-being. And I pulled another bit of data that sort of stood out to me, and this is from the Optum Workplace survey. And they were looking at engagement and health and its impact on some organizational variables through the survey. And one of the questions that they asked, they were looking at how often do you feel tense, anxious, or depressed? And for those that answered that they were never stressed or rarely stressed versus those that were often stressed, you can see there's a big difference there in their commitment to the organization. Someone who was never stressed was 7 times less likely to leave the organization than someone who was often stressed. And when it came to enjoying their work, someone who was never stressed was much happier in doing their work than someone who reported that they were often stressed. So, stress we know makes an impact on work life and the commitment to the organization. And we also know that wellness programs can make a big impact on stress and depression, if designed and done right. So some of the specifics that I wanted to present here as far as how we can actually impact engagement through wellness were that, well, first, we have to make the connection. And so it's very important that we're tying the metrics of our wellness program to the larger metrics of the organization around productivity and other things. There's an old saying that if it's not measured, it can't be managed. So really settling on the metrics that can impact health and wellness and engagement, that's very important to start with that. Another important factor that we need to look at is communications. And this is really going to ring through the entire presentation here today. Communications are really critical for success of programs. So we need to communicate better. Not only the awareness of programs, but answer that question, what's in it for me, for the individual? Why should they participate? What's expected of them? Another important consideration is recognition. And that is, to make a big deal out of wellness achievement, not only workplace achievement. So we tend to think of recognition programs in the workplace as, well, for example, if you're in a sales organization, the person that had the highest quarterly sales or met their sales quota. Those things are important, but it's also important to recognize the fact that somebody met a wellness goal or undertook a wellness challenge and was successful at it. Maybe they had a goal of losing and maintaining their weight for a period of time. If they're successful, that needs to be recognized. And those things can go a long way at impacting engagement. Another one of the trends that I wanted to discuss was tracking and this idea of the quantified self. This is something that, is really taking off. And the chart to the left, this is from BI Intelligence, and it's the look at wearable devices and not only where they are today, but where they're headed. And as you can see by this chart, they're really expecting significant growth over time. In fact, they say that the compound annual growth rate is over 35% over the next 5 years. And so adoption of wearables and tracking of behaviors and activities is certainly on the rise, and it's going to continue that way. And as far as what that means from a worksite health and wellness perspective, I have some things that I'd like you to consider. And the first one is, can you integrate the data? And by that, I mean, if you're going to supply fitness trackers, for example, or if you know your members, your employees are purchasing their own and they're using these devices, can that data that they're collecting be pulled into your systems and the way that you're administering your program? Today, many organizations have wellness portals like the one that we supply, and it's important that the activity devices or monitoring devices that you're using are able to integrate with those portals. So there's a seamless movement of data. Another question to consider is, how will the use of these devices impact incentive design? In the past, when we were documenting someone's compliance with an incentive program and whether they were going to get recognition or not, or earn a reward, much of it was self-attested. Now, with the advent of these devices, that's really shifting away from self-attestation to more actual verification of data via these tools. So that makes an impact on how an incentive is going to be designed and managed. So we have to ask that question. Another one is, and this is probably more of a generational issue than some other things, but the question is, where should the monitoring start and stop? And there's been some concern with how the data that we're collecting and how we're using it. It's kind of that notion of Big Brother watching. Is that the case or not? So we have to factor that into our thinking. As these devices become more pervasive and we're able to track sleep, weight, activity, nutrition, all of these things, how does that factor into our program design? Just very quickly, I pulled in another slide here just to show kind of the prevalence of these devices again, and the fact that they really are growing quite a bit. Another point that I would make is that from a consumer perspective, there really is the perception that this is a good thing. 71% of Americans believe that wearable tech has improved their health and fitness, and that makes sense to me. Just recently, another study came out about the effectiveness of regular weight monitoring to weight management. And the recommendation was to weigh yourself daily so that you're always monitoring the direction that you're heading in. And so these devices, as they contribute to the ease of monitoring, I think that will have an ability to help keep people on track with their health changes and health behaviors that they're looking to make. Mobility is another important trend. So smartphones, they're practically everywhere now. In fact, I don't know that I know anyone that just has a regular flip phone anymore, or the dumb phone, I guess. Most everybody I know is using a smartphone, and that certainly is borne out by the data. Now, I looked at two surveys here that I wanted to relay. The first one was from Pew, and this was looking at how people are using their smartphones, and what percentage they were using their phone to collect information and provide services. And in that particular survey, 62% used it to get information about a health condition. 57% do online banking, and so on and so forth. So getting information about health over your smartphone is certainly something that is taking off and that we'll see more of. Another survey that I looked at was from the NYU Langone Medical Center. And again, this survey sort of parallels the other one. They were looking at what people were using their smartphones for, and 58% of respondents said that they had downloaded at least one health app, while 42% had downloaded 5 or more. So, again, quite a lot of heavy use around the healthcare space. And when asked, what the most frequently downloaded apps included, 53% were used to track physical activity, and then food intake, weight loss, and exercise instructions. And that certainly parallels and kind of jives with what we see in our health portal and the trackers that we have over our technology. Fitness tracking certainly is one of the most predominant areas. The next trend that I wanted to showcase was incentive design. And this is one of those things that it's evolving as our understanding of what motivates people evolves. Our programs are evolving, but beyond that, even organizations, the government, and so forth that are charged with policies, they're changing. We know that the EEOC has made some statements and designations around incentives for health and wellness programs, the ACA. So there's a lot of activity in this space around incentive design. And what I wanted to focus on was, well, first, just to kind of provide some context here, what types of incentives are we providing out there in the wellness workspace? And this was from Arthur Gallagher. Cash and gifts is still the most predominantly used incentive at 63%. Premium differentials at 39%, and then you see it going down from there. So cash and gifts certainly are still dominant. What we're really trying to do, and what we really need to look at, though, is as our programs evolve, our end goal should really be intrinsic motivation and value. How can we build that so that people aren't involved in health behaviors in order to get the cash or the gift? They're really involved for their own well-being, to improve their own energy, their own health, their own ability to live life at their fullest the way they define that. So intrinsic motivation is really kind of the end game that we're looking for here. Some of the recommendations that we have around incentives are, one, to make sure that that there's a good correlation between getting the incentive and the activity itself. So I'll give you kind of an example that's the opposite of what we're suggesting. A program, you have a walking program in the spring, and however the program is designed, whether it's the first one to complete a certain distance, or then everyone that completes a certain distance, or logs so much activity, what have you, when the program ends, nothing happens. And at the end of the year, maybe the end of the benefits year, the person sees that, well, now I get my reward or prize because I completed that program in the spring. That gap is too large. It should be much tighter as far as the activity and earning the incentive. Making sure that, number two here, you're making sure that the effort that you're trying to change is worth the money that you're spending. So making sure that there's a positive correlation there. All too often, we spend too much money on things like taking a health survey, which is a relatively simple and easy task, versus providing more attention and more recognition to someone doing something that's really difficult, like quitting smoking or maintaining an exercise program or weight loss. These last two, making sure that the rewards motivate and that they're fun and easy to understand, are also really important. Sometimes our incentive designs are so complicated that people sort of are overwhelmed, and they really kind of lose interest in the program. So making sure that they're fun and easy to understand is certainly an important recommendation. Another trend that's developing is around the whole idea of population health management and integration. And when we think of population health management at beBetter Health, as I state here, our kind of operational definition is providing the right program to the right person at the right time. Because in any given population, your organization, your community, however you want to define the population, we know that there's this continuum of needs and interest. You have young, old, very healthy and well, versus perhaps those that have very significant health challenges. They're dealing with a chronic illness or condition or serious disease. You've got all of those within a given population, and the most effective programs have something for everyone. And it's really important that data is really understood and is really a key for the integration of services to make for effective population health management. So I pointed out some of the things for you to consider there, and what it means to your worksite wellness program. So the first one, knowing your data, that's really important. At the very least, who has what information as far as your vendors go, and how can it be used? So many, or I should say most programs have more than one organization contributing to their population health. You might have an EAP program, you might have an organization that's focused on a particular behavior, your general wellness vendor, making sure that your insurer who's providing your health insurance, make sure that you know what data is available, who has it, and how it can be integrated to make more impact for your overall program. As far as knowing your health-related resources, it's very important to understand, again, the full scope of resources that are available to your organization. You've got those providers that I mentioned. You have the community, might be your local hospital. What do they have available? So understanding that and integrating that within your program can make for a much greater impact. And of course, to facilitate all of this, it's important to have an effective strategic program plan. So think of population health again as really trying to make sure that your program has something for everyone, and that you're trying to find ways to break down silos of services, silos of data and information and of resources, and integrating them to make the most impact for your program. Number 5 is, by way of trends, is the culture of health. And here again, this is one that's gotten a lot of discussion and talk over the last couple years in particular. And I think it's because we've really started to understand that what we're ultimately trying to achieve with corporate health and wellness is just this. It's building a culture of health within the organization where good health norms and health support really do become the norm. It's a part of the way we do business. It's a part of our environment and our culture. And so I try to point out some keys to building an effective culture of health. And these are just ideas for you to consider. Some of the ones that really are meaningful to me. The second one, having meaningful and clear communications from leadership, I think, is really critical. I've been at this now for, I guess about 30 years. And if someone asked me, what's the one thing that if you can have whatever you want in working with a particular client, an unlimited budget, the best facilities, what have you, what's the one thing that you'd really like to have in order to build the best program? Well, hands down for me, it would be a really committed leadership team, those that really walk the talk and really model, the culture and the environment and the behaviors that we're really trying to instill in the workforce. Because with that, you can do so much, but without it, it's very difficult to achieve much of anything. So leadership is really important when it comes to building the culture of health. All of these bullets, of course, are. The last one, creating a caring environment where friendship and support is the norm, a family environment, if you will. That's also very important. The environment we're finding just, it's reflective of the health culture. That environment really has the ability to write on our health and the ability to influence us in some dramatic and sometimes subtle ways. But it's really recognizing that environment and how we can shape that to really help support the culture of health. It's important. So things like the attractiveness of stairwells, policies around taking exercise breaks, the food that we have available, all of that is part of an environment and beyond that. The next one is around consumerism. Now this one, for those of you that are really exclusively focused on the wellness space, it may not be such a prominent trend that you see right now, but I think it's one that you will see more and more of, because in the larger healthcare marketplace, we are definitely moving toward what I call a consumer-centric healthcare experience. And one of the resources that I found very useful is from the Deloitte Center for Health Solutions, their 2015 survey of healthcare consumerism. And I highly recommend that as far as reading material is concerned. And we're really starting to see this shift take place. And they pointed out some areas that I want to spend a little more time on as far as how to help kind of foster this movement toward a more consumer-centric healthcare experience. And the first one was partnering with providers. More consumers today prefer to partner with doctors, really, instead of just relying passively on them to make treatment decisions. They want to have a partner relationship. And I think there's a real generational difference here. I know that my parents, for them, their doctor was really kind of the all-knowing, authoritative person, and whatever they said that went. There was no questioning. There was no, they weren't active at all in their healthcare decisions. And I think, for my generation and millennials and so forth, that's really changing. We want to have a much more active partnership, to be much more involved. One of the notes that I found in that on that line of thinking, 34% of survey respondents in this Deloitte survey strongly believe that doctors should encourage patients to research and ask questions about their treatment. So we're definitely starting to move in that direction. As far as tapping online resources are concerned, we noted in some of the previous trends that we're using our smartphones to look for health information. And what we're starting to see is that people are really starting to trust, getting that information online. So it's important from a wellness program's perspective is to make sure the information that, well, I guess first I should start with making sure that you have information available and making sure that that information is reputable and easy to access for the consumer. And certainly, the relying on technology is going to increase from a consumer perspective in healthcare. I kind of think of it, healthcare is kind of where banking was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We're all very comfortable with technology as far as online banking and so forth is concerned, and that will continue in healthcare. The next one is value on investments. And we traditionally thought of return on investment as the way that we evaluated programs, but we've really started to shift that to a broader value on investment perspective. And I really like this saying here that I'll read it to you in case you can't make it out in the slide, but this is from Einstein. He said, "Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted." And I think that's very true when it comes to workplace wellness. We can't count everything that makes an impact on employee health and its value to an organization. And we need to get better at really understanding that. So I've provided here some examples for you to consider as far as how you can document value. Everything from is employee satisfaction rising? Are more employees contributing to your culture of health, and so on and so forth. I think the most important point that I'd like to get across when it comes to this shift toward value on investment is that it's really important for you to understand what counts for your organization. What metrics really matter. Is it a productivity measure? Is it about employee recruitment or retention? Understand that for your organization, and then make sure you have the means in place to capture that data, to report on it, and to make sure that your program is really strategically designed to make a positive impact on that particular metric. Again, this is going to be different for every organization because we're in different lines of business. We have different focuses, and for that matter, it's different for every individual, how we value health. So understanding the metrics that are important is a real critical first step. Another trend that we're really starting to see a lot more of is in the area of financial wellness. So, I made the note here. Unless your company's Edward Jones or I don't know, one of the other large financial management firms, Charles Schwab or what have you, the chances are pretty good that your employees need more information about their financial well-being. And as kind of evidence of that, this slide to the left, the chart to the left, is from the 2015 AFLAC Workforce report, and it's looking at employees' financial realities. And those numbers are pretty grim, and you can understand, given those numbers, how stressful someone's finances can be to them. And of course, as we stated before, stress has a direct impact on our ability to engage, on our overall health and wellness. So anything that we can do to impact stress is a positive for us, and that certainly applies to making sure that we attend to our financial health just like we do our physical health. So, I laid out here some considerations for you to make when trying to address this in your wellness program. All of these are important. The one thing that I probably point out most importantly, and that is that we really have to understand that it has to be a plan that we create to address financial health and well-being. It just can't be an event. So if you have a lunch and learn next week about effective retirement planning, that's a good thing, but that's not enough to solve this problem and this challenge. You should think of the development of the financial aspect of your wellness program just like you do the others. How create goals and objectives, timelines, how are you going to evaluate its impact? All of those things need to be brought to bear on this issue. The third bullet point I think is also important in that different demographics are going to look at this differently. The person who's new to the workforce, the young person, is going to have different financial stresses and needs than the person that's kind of at the end of their career and thinking of retiring soon. So the final one is the shift to well-being. And this is, I'm really glad about this trend, because really what we are saying here is that when it comes to our health and wellness and well-being, it's more than kind of what we've focused on in the past. Our industry has really been very biometric oriented up to this point. And maybe it's an evolution, that there's value in that. Certainly, we need to address our physiology, our biometric markers. It's important, that we have good blood pressure and cholesterol and so forth. But a program can't stop there if you really want to make the most impact, because as I state here, we are more than our biometrics. We're many things. And this is an example on this next slide of some of the things that go into accounting for our overall well-being. And there's certainly more than just this, but these are some prominent ones. As we just finished talking about, our financial well-being, our emotional health, family health, life purpose. All of these topics are important to address in a comprehensive health and wellness program. And how do we do that? Well, one of the recommendations that is very apparent for me is that in our health risk assessment, and I'm sure others, you have the ability to really uncover the needs and interest of your population. Ask questions about where they stand today, from a financial well-being perspective, and what other issues that they have, and then use that data that you're gathering to really develop more targeted, tailored strategic programming. So the health risk survey, or the health survey, really has the ability to help facilitate a great starting point in understanding the population, what they need, maybe the resources that they have available to them, and what you can do to help make an impact on this. It's just really important to, again, recognize that if you really want to help someone improve their overall well-being, you have to look beyond just biometrics to these other things as well. So again, in conclusion, as far as the trends, these are the main trends that I wanted to sort of discuss today. As I mentioned, there's plenty others that are going on. Healthcare is so dynamic. Telemedicine, for example, is a trend that's picking up steam, and perhaps in other sessions, we'll focus on some other trends and maybe key in on some of these things in particular and focus a whole session on them. Certainly, I could spend an entire 30 to 40 minutes on any one of these things. The other thing that I wanted to add, so this is a bonus slide, if you will. So along with the 10 trends, wanted to make a prediction, and that is, it's pretty easy to see that given the pace of change and, for example, the trends in technology with smartphone use and wearable health monitors, that things can get pretty complicated. I think we need to do our best as those who are administrating programs, facilitating wellness programs, to make sure that from a user's perspective that it's pretty easy and clear and simple. Try to, I guess as the saying goes, work really hard to make things look simple. So we're doing the work so that the participants' experience is one that's not so complex. And so here's some of the suggestions around that. Again, communications, making sure that they're clear and concise is really important. On the incentive side, making sure that it's not so complex, that we pay attention to those recommendations around the size of the incentive, the timing of the incentive, all of those things. It's really important to understand. If possible, let the technology do the tracking. Take steps away from people so that it's easy for them. And finally, there are so many things that we can focus on, but I think it's better to focus on a few things and do those really well, and then move on from there. So have a wellness program that's designed to evolve and to grow as your abilities grow and the needs and interests grow. But don't overwhelm people with doing too much too soon. So I want to thank you again for your time and attention today. The resources that we discussed this session, again, it's recorded. The other educational tools and resources that we have are available on the website. Hope you take advantage of them. My contact information is also there, and certainly welcome any discussion or feedback that you might have. And we're here to help, and really looking forward to supporting your efforts at building the best programs possible that make the most impact on the individual and organizational health and wellness. So thank you again.